January 5th, 2021. Sanctuary changes. After visiting the Wharton property and agonizing over what it would mean to rebuild elsewhere, I think I've resolved myself to stay put and spend as little as possible on the existing cages and structures, and yet still give the cats the most room possible and the best camera views for our supporters. Checking in with Nature's Classroom regarding Bobby and Panther. Carole, thanks for checking in on our cats. Both cats are doing great. The Panther has not had a single problem since you guys helped, and Bobby is doing very well. Thank you for all your help again. Thanks, Keith Laycock, Principal, Nature's Classroom. It was short, so I'm going to go to January 6, 2021. I may have awakened to a kinder, healthier world, despite what you see in the headlines here. Well, by 3 p.m., the headlines confirmed that Republicans would no longer be in power, but it didn't turn out to be as peaceful as I'd hoped. This is what I was thinking at 8 a.m. Early results are predicting that the Georgia runoffs have tipped the Senate Democratic. If so, animal welfare, earth protections, and compassion for others will take the forefront. I may formally re-register this year to drop my Republican designation, as it is an embarrassment to be associated with such zealots who promote misogyny, racism, destruction of the planet and animals for profit, and all that is currently wrong with the status quo. Final counts won't be in until Friday, and Republicans will rail against the people's choice for months, but just like being rid of Trump, we will be on a path to enlightenment. I wish I could talk about how I feel openly, but due to the nonprofit status of the sanctuary, I cannot, and you know how I hate being muzzled. Otherwise, I am at peace. And then this was a story that published, Is the Tiger King about to be uncaged? Joe Exotic, the jailed star of the hit Netflix show, is appealing to Donald Trump for a pardon. Here, Carole Baskin, the woman he tried to have killed, tells why she'll be carrying a gun, just in case. By Barbara McMahon for the Daily Mail. Until March last year, most of us had never heard of Carole Baskin, and then came the coronavirus pandemic and the first lockdown, and we all had to stay home to squash the sombrero of COVID cases, just as Netflix began streaming Tiger King: Murder, Mayhem, and Madness. The compelling true crime documentary series with a cast of bizarre, real-life personalities and sinister plot twists, became a cultural phenomenon that had viewers on both sides of the Atlantic in its thrall. The hero, or villain, depending on your point of view, was the undeniably engaging Joe Exotic, the gay, blonde, mulleted, tattooed, and pierced, many times married, occasional meth-snorting owner of an exotic animal park in Oklahoma. Carole, the heroine, or the villainess, depending on your point of view, was his nemesis. The self-styled conservationist and big cat activist had been campaigning for years to stop the breeding of tigers and lions in captivity. She was Joe's most prolific critic, constantly criticizing him in print, on TV, and social media about his practice of rearing cubs and charging people to have their photographs taken, cuddling one at his zoo, in shopping malls, or wherever else he took his animals. Once they became too big to handle, the tigers and lions were left to languish in cages in the zoo, situated on an old ranch. In 2013, Carole won a $1 million civil suit against Joe over a trademark infringement case. It was then he decided on revenge and twice tried to hire hitmen to murder her. She came across as the ultimate eccentric cat lady and interfering busybody, whom Joe accused of murdering her second husband after his mysterious disappearance. Tiger King has been Can't Look Away TV for the some 70 million households worldwide, which have streamed the TV series to date, and the latest lockdown will no doubt attract more fans. Joe Exotic, whose full name is Joseph Allen Maldonado Passage, was arrested in 2018. He is currently serving 22 years in prison for animal abuse and the murder-for-hire plot against Carole Baskin. But recently, it emerged that he's seeking a pardon before President Trump leaves office in 2 weeks' time. His 257-page application included a personal plea from Joe. He believes that both he and Mr. Trump are victims of federal investigators, saying, "I see what they do to you, and I can't believe it," he wrote. Team Tiger. Lawyers and investigators working to free Joe reportedly headed to Washington today on a private jet named Exotic One and expect a pardon as early as this week. Quote, President Trump is the only one we can approach in this manner, unquote, said lead supporter Eric Love, a Texas millionaire and private investigator who seems as eccentric as the man he is trying to free. He is the only one who can appreciate Joe's showmanship. So, how does Carole, 59, feel about the latest development? Sitting in her office at Big Cat Rescue, her 64-acre animal sanctuary in Tampa, Florida, the woman I meet seems far removed from the flamboyant character we saw on TV. Then she purrs her signature, "Hey all you cool cats and kittens." No matter how many times you hear it, it's oddly mesmerizing. Carole's big cat-influenced style was a feature of the Netflix show, and today she's wearing palazzo pants and a fetching tiger stripe. Her penchant for floral headdresses persists, and midway through our rollicking interview, in which she deals with those rumors about her alleged murder of her second husband, and confirms she's bisexual and once advertised for a wife, she plonks on one of her flowing blonde locks. She's keen to talk about Christmas and how she and her third husband, Howie, celebrated with the sanctuary's 54 residents, a menagerie of rescued and abandoned tigers, lions, jaguars, and other exotic felines, such as servals and bobcats. Quote, we bought a whole bunch of Christmas trees for the cats because they loved the scent of pine, and we gave them a turkey and Cornish game hens on the big day, unquote. Quote, the bigger cats love carrying around raw meat because it makes them feel like they've killed their own prey, unquote, she draws. But when I raise the subject of Joe Exotic and reports of his attempt to win a presidential pardon, Carol's cheery smile vanishes, saying, I do think it's poetic justice that he's caged like the hundreds, if not thousands of animals that he bred for life in cages, she sniffs. I think the public was duped into seeing Joe as a lovable rogue, but anyone who reads the transcript from his trial will see that he shouldn't be walking amongst the rest of us. Quote, he shot 5 healthy tigers because they were an inconvenience to him, and I'm in just as much danger with him in jail. He could still fund a hitman from prison, unquote. She says the content of Tiger King took her by surprise. She and Howie thought they were working on a documentary to expose cruelty in the captive tiger trade, and she is angry the series concentrated on Joe's warped lifestyle and accusations about her. Netflix producers Eric Good and Rebecca Chaiklin say Carole spoke freely to them about her personal life, her childhood, her alleged abuse by her first husband, and the disappearance of her second, Don Lewis. Quote, with any project that goes on for 5 years, things evolve and change, and we follow it as any good storyteller does, unquote, said Chaiklin. Certainly, Carole is not usually camera shy. Big Cat Rescue has millions of followers on Facebook and Twitter. And since 2006, its YouTube channel, which regularly features Carole, has, which it did not, has had almost 600 million views. But recently she was pranked by YouTubers, one of whom pretended to be the U.S. late-night TV show Jimmy Fallon. Another tricked her into sending birthday wishes to a shamed Australian TV star Rolf Harris, who served a jail term in the UK for indecent assaults on schoolgirls, and got her to mention Rolf's best friend, Jimmy Savile. These experiences have made her wary, and this is a rare interview. But Carole is keen to correct the impression given by Tiger King that she and Joe operated similar facilities. And indeed, that's what Joe told the court at his trial, saying, my problem is she's a hypocrite, unquote, he said, describing the Big Cat Rescue as no more than a roadside zoo. Quote, the fundamental difference is that zoos buy animals, breed them, sell them, allow public contact with them, and sometimes they take them off-site, like Joe did, taking tiger cubs to shopping malls for public entertainment, unquote, Carole retorts. Quote, sanctuaries do not buy, sell, or trade animals. They don't allow public contact with them or breed them. They're polar opposites in their philosophy. The only thing they have in common is that they both have animals in cages. Sanctuaries like ours have bigger and nicer enclosures, but the main goal for any sanctuary is to put itself out of business. We shouldn't have to save animals from these horrific conditions. If the public knew what happens behind the scenes, they would never stand for it, unquote. Could the exotic animals she has rescued be released into the wild? Quote, all of these cats were born in captivity and kept in cages. so it's not legal to release them anywhere. They'd never survive, unquote, she insists. Carole has never been to Africa or Asia to see big cats in the wild. Isn't that a bit odd for a conservationist? Quote, if I saw tigers living in the wild, I would never be able to stand another day. If I saw tigers living in the wild, I would never be able to stand another day taking care of these captive cats that I can't set free, she sighs. Quote, I know that they don't belong in cages, and I know how bad it is for them and how much they must hate their lives, but we can only do our best. Our enclosures are huge, and our cats have beautiful living conditions, but no one would know that from watching Tiger King, unquote. In her wildest imagination, did she ever believe Joe Exotic, one of many breeders she targeted, would try to have her killed? Joe Exotic is currently in prison serving a 22-year sentence after being found guilty of a murder-for-hire plot against his exotic animal rival, Carole Baskin. Joe Exotic is currently in prison, serving a 22-year sentence after being found guilty of murder-for-hire plot against his exotic animal rival, Carole Baskin. Looks like that's said twice. He'd been trying for 15 years to get someone to kill me, and he had his little internet show where he'd tell people I needed to be shot, killed, have my legs broken, she recalls, but he couldn't whip people into enough of a frenzy to make it happen. Then in 2015, I started getting phone calls from people who said Joe had tried to pay them to kill me. I contacted the police, but it wasn't until 2017 when the FBI that had an informant who managed to set up a call between an undercover FBI agent and Joe that Joe said, quote, the last guy screwed it up, so I'll pay you to kill her, unquote. Carole seems remarkably sanguine about what sounds like the plot of a bad thriller, saying, I think Joe is wily and conniving and he'll do anything for attention. But of all of the abusers in the big cat industry, he's the dumbest, she scoffs. When people ask me if I'm relieved that he's in jail, I say not really, because there's still a lot of scary people who hate me and would also love to see me dead, and I will still keep going after them. She says she's had to hire bodyguards and that she and Howie legally carry guns. I'm on my guard all the time, she says. It's definitely misogynistic. In truth, though, there is little that phases Carole. When I ask her about the allegation she murdered her second husband, property developer, he was not a property developer, Don Lewis, and ground his body up, she raises her eyes to heaven. There was a meat grinder, but it was only big enough to grind up chicken patties and cat food, not a body. It was gone by 1994, 1995, and Don disappeared in 97. I did not kill my husband, she insists. The only thing that made sense to me is that he bought an ultralight, a lightweight, and this is, I guess her words put in here, a lightweight fixed-wing aircraft from someone. His car was found at the local airstrip. Met the pilot, bought the plane, took them back to wherever they were from, and as he was flying back, crashed into the Gulf of Mexico. He didn't have a license, so he'd fly at under 200 feet so the radar wouldn't pick him up. And if you make a mistake at 200 feet, you can't recover. I think he was flying across the water and something went wrong. If something like that had gone down in the Gulf, no one would have found the wreckage. According to the police, Carole Baskin was never a suspect in her husband's disappearance. Her first husband, Michael Murdoch, whom she married at age 17, and who is the father of her daughter Jamie, is rarely mentioned, as she has claimed he was extremely abusive. She met Howard at a fundraiser 5 years after Lewis's disappearance. I hit the jackpot, she says. He tells everyone his most important mission is to make me happy. Certainly, Tiger King viewers will be familiar with footage of Howard gazing in adoration at his wife while their wedding pictures have gone viral. Carole was dressed traditionally in white, while Howard turned up dressed as a caveman. Oh, those pictures are hilarious, Carole says happily. And what of her recent revelations that she's bisexual? I've had relationships with women throughout my life, but not since I married Howie. I've been in a monogamous relationship for 18 years, she says. However, she confirmed she did once advertise for a wife back in the 80s. The advert was my warped sense of humor, she says. I needed someone to cook and clean, and the person who responded was heterosexual, so I never once made a pass at her. She was the best wife. She was a great cook and kept the house spotless. Finally, I asked if she's ever thought about writing about her extraordinary life. Oh, I've been approached many times, she says, but my story isn't done yet. Not until we end the captive ownership of big cats in America, or until somebody kills me. Howie explains our judgment against Joe Schreibvogel. In a landmark lawsuit, the damages are based on what the defendant gained financially from using your intellectual property. Since Joe renamed his traveling show Big Cat Rescue Entertainment, our damages were to be based on how much money his traveling show made during the period where he used our name. We determined from the depositions and the documents he had to provide during discovery that the revenue was about $650,000. So in round numbers, the consent judgment of $1 million, $1.028 million, was based on that $650,000 from the primary case, around $300,000 in legal fees we had spent, and $50,000 and $25,000 respectively in the two copyright cases. There were 3 lawsuits. The first, and major one, was for violation of our trademark and on our logo and name. Subsequently, we filed 2 other copyright suits for using photos and videos. It is the trademark case where one way to calculate damages is by calculating how much the party violating the trademark benefited from using it. If you're enjoying my diary, please like, share, and subscribe. You can find other ways to connect to me over at bigcatrescue.org/Carole.Baskin.